Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast Football Week 3, and Éamonn Fitzmaurice is with myself and Rory to look ahead to it all. How are you keeping, Éamonn?
Great. How's the farm, folks?
Good. Excited. Lots of football to look forward to. So in Munster, we've got semi-finals, Cork, Kerry, Clare, Tip. In Ulster, some intriguing quarter-finals, Fermanagh Down, Monaghan, Donegal, and a Connacht semi-final lineup, Galway, Roscommon, Leitrim, Mayo. Rory, when we were kind of chatting this week, Éamonn said, look, maybe let's just kind of cherry pick a couple of the big ones to look at. And one point he was making is by the end of this weekend, we will have seen all of the All-Ireland contenders in action, including Kerry. And I think maybe there's probably a bit of intrigue around their first championship outing. There's always a bit of fun around Cork, Kerry. But just given that we've only just seen Kerry recently winning a league title, what sort of form do you think Jack O'Connor is bringing to this championship for week one?
Oh, I'd say Jack's in great form, Jackie. He was in great form after the league final. And the thing about the league, and you know, it's a great competition, and it's a great competition to win. It has its place and everything else. But I think what it afforded Kerry was it just gave them a bit of space. It gave, there was a bit of a relaxing down here in terms of the focus on the team, and that there's a good bit of positivity. I think in particular because of the way that they played in the last couple of rounds in the league. Maybe not so much in the league final. It was a case of just getting the job done that day. But they played very well in a couple of particularly in the Armagh game and in the Galway game as well. We saw a lot of the best of Kerry and what they're capable of doing. So they've had a good break. They were able to, I imagine they probably had a night out, the night of the league final, which because of the condensed nature of the season now, it's probably very hard to organise those nights out, which I always felt were a critical part of a squad and team building and everything else. They had 3 weeks. They've been to Portugal. They've had their warm weather camp, and the likes of Shawnee Shea starting to get closer to full fitness. So I think Kerry are in a good place. They'll be looking forward to getting on the road now again this weekend, and going up to Cork and going up and getting to play in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. That's a great, even the venue in its own right. Even though I can't imagine there'll be a huge crowd there, it'll still be exciting for the players going up there. And with Cork, then we don't know what we're going to get. You'd be hoping that they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Kerry and really test them. To be fair, as they have over the last couple of seasons, where the gaps have been, only 3 and 2 points. But I'd say Kerry are quite happy where they're at the moment, Jackie.
Yeah. What about Cork, Rory? Because Éamonn's right. There has been a bit of huff and puff. They definitely have ran Kerry close at points, and you've felt like they're making progress. But I just don't know if anybody feels that they're at Kerry's level or anywhere near it.
And they haven't been really for so long at this stage. They're not really at underage level. The Cork teams aren't really featuring hugely at schools level. I'm not even sure the last time a Cork school made it to the Rivalry final. Éamonn might know off the top of his head. Was it Rochestown maybe, or Hamilton? It's just
Rochestown, I'd say, Rory, 10 years ago, I'd say.
Rochestown. So Kerry have been dominant all across the board, and look, the problems with Cork football are too long and too convoluted and too complex for us to get into here. I think what I suppose is disappointing for an awful lot of Cork football fans, of which I am one, is that despite all of that, you should still be capable of being more competitive than where Cork are at currently. And they haven't really been helped by a lot of chopping and changing within the panel. We saw a big exodus again last year. I saw Stephen Sherlock last week kicking 16 points for the Bars in a league game. Why isn't he togging out this weekend? Why aren't they being more successful in keeping players and keeping the panel together for longer? That's some of the questions that you would have to ask. The under-20s were lucky again the other night to get over Tipperary and get back into a Munster final, a very disputed free. And, look, so I suppose you couldn't really be painting a very rosy picture. Having said that, there is still a few green shoots. I think John Cleary has got a reasonably good shape on this current bunch. Again, you're missing a couple of key players from last year. We know Conor Corbett did his cruciate again when he was over in America. Now he is back training, which is a bit of a loss because I do think there was plenty to come from him. He was a big underage star. And your inside line will definitely give you some cause for hope, like Brian Hurley, Chris Oak-Jones and Mark Cronin have been scoring well. Brian O'Driscoll's kicking some good two-pointers. He's obviously had a bit of a renaissance in his intercounty career. I'd be a little bit worried about their full back line. It's very green. You've two lads there, Sean Brady and Neil Lorden. I don't know where they're playing. They're certainly playing their first championship year. And maybe that Limerick game was potentially their first ever championship match. And you're going in against Kerry.
Yeah.
That's a lot now. Look, you would imagine Daniel O'Mahony will pick up Clifford, but it isn't that Clifford, this might sound weird to say, it isn't that Clifford that I'd be worried about. I think matching off against Paddy is going to be one of Cork's problems. And you would know, like if Sean Powter's fit, would it be a crazy thing to maybe pair Sean off against Paddy, just because he might have the pace, he might have that little bit of energy, he might have that bit of experience. He's obviously a very good tackler. He's a very disciplined player. And but you're definitely like if you don't tie Paddy Clifford down, long evening in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, but that's not just a Cork problem either, Éamonn, in fairness. Like, I think from what John Cleary's dealing with is like what every other county is dealing with. It's trying to, how do you stop David Clifford? How do you stop Paddy Clifford? How do you stop Shawnee Shea? How do you stop all the threats? So this is
and we
not
haven't
a
even
Cork
seen
problem.
Shawnee yet.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think they're probably going to be judged harshly on a weekend if they can't tie those problems up, but no more so than any other county. If they were playing Clare or Tip this weekend, I would say the exact same problems are going to be there.
Yeah, no, look, in fairness to Paddy in particular, he's playing the football of his life, and he's playing great heads up football, and so much goes through him. But I agree with you, Rory. I think Sean Powter might be the man that he'd match him in terms of, like, the thing with trying to match Paddy is that he's such a huge engine, he's so athletic, and he's so good on the ball then in terms of his skill set that it's hard to disrupt him. And he's matured a good bit. It used to be thrown at him about Conor Myder did the job in him in 2021, and he's matured a lot from then, and he knows how to affect the game even if he is being very tightly marked. But yeah, that will be one of the things I saw John Cleary was mentioning, that the critical thing for them is to get their hands on the ball and to try and disrupt, Kerry's kick out and try and get as much possession as they can in their own kick out, and that they'd feel that if they've enough ball that they can cause Kerry plenty of problems with their running game and everything else. So I think
might be a game that Rory Dean starts, Éamonn.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be Rory, and could be. I think that's the way the Cork are going to look at us. That they know that if Kerry have a load of possession with the way that they're playing, they're very hard to deal with, and it will be a long day out then. But what they'll be trying to do is disrupt it. And in fairness, I think not that Cork are in that much of an underdog status, but Antrim showed us last weekend that there still is plenty of room for the old school, hugely physical, aggressive, go after a team, like an underdog that we would have been a feature of the game 15, 20 years ago, where they might run out of steam, but they'd have a real go early on. And I think Antrim showed that against Armagh last weekend, and Armagh weathered the storm, and even with a lot of their big players missing, they still showed that they have serious depth and they had a great win. But you'd expect that from Cork as well. I think that's the point you were making, Rory, off air about Dara's column yesterday, and he was talking about that. Is that bit of anger there? Is that bit of anger in Cork there? Like, and you'd like to see them bringing that, and that if they do that, who knows where it can take them? Because as maligned as they have been, they have plenty of talent, and that's the thing always with me, that they kind of underwhelm you a bit, because they have the tools, they have the management, they have the players, they have the backing. So I don't know, but like I said, I think that should be a kind of almost a non-negotiable for them, that they should really tear into it. They're at home. They haven't been a million miles away from Kerry over the last couple of seasons, and there's a huge carrot for them there, obviously, to try and beat them.
Yeah, and you're looking at an awful lot of players, Jackie, bar a Division 3 medal, that have won nothing really in their intercounty careers. Like Cork haven't won the Munster title since 2012. It's an awful long time, and so like if you're going to catch Kerry at all, Saturday's probably the time to do it. It's the first day out in the championship. Cork have a championship match already under their belt, albeit against a Limerick team that was operating in Division 4. I suppose one of the big disappointing aspects as well for me around this, and look, Éamonn will know this as well as you, Jackie, is how the pedigree and the allure and the status of the fixture has fallen so much. That's a major disappointment for me. Cork and Kerry, it's a storied fixture. I mean, like when we were kids growing up, it was nearly, I would say, not nearly, it was more important than the All-Ireland final. Playing Kerry every year, whether it was down in Killarney in the park, it was just one of those things. You like, as someone who went through the Nemo Rangers Club, it was such a big thing. And to see it sort of almost as an afterthought on a Saturday at 6 or 7 o'clock on GA, Gore Plus, or whatever you want to call it, like, I don't know, I there's no buzz about it. There's no build up. Is it the fact that, look, it's not really knockout, or it is when it's on? We haven't even had Easter yet. Obviously the hurlers are playing the following day up in Ennis. There's so much wrong that I can't even begin to articulate it properly.
Is, though, Rory, right? Rivalries die off when they don't become a rivalry.
That's very true. Very
like,
true.
if you look at a Dublin Meath in a similar situation,
correct,
people of our vintage who grew up in that and who would have thought this is sparkles, it's everywhere. The hurlers are just such a prime draw now. And I think the difficulty for supporters of any, and we're not going to get into this in a long thing today, but I do think if you're going around and you're trying to pay €40 a ticket and you want to go and watch the hurlers and the footballers and you're in a dual county like Cork, very difficult to pick both. And the glamour of it at the moment is people are going with the hurlers. So anyway, look, we'll come back to it, but I do think there's a huge opportunity on the other side of the draw as well, Éamonn, though, for Clare or Tip. You know, I think if Cork could find themselves in that position on the other side, the coin might look a little bit different, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have been quite impressed with Clare for a lot of the season. This season they've been quite unlucky in a way that they didn't get up out of Division 3. You know, they beat the teams that went up.
Yeah.
But they probably didn't look after business against some of the other teams. Then, particularly earlier in the league, as they were probably getting used to new management and they'd welcome back a share of players as well, and betting all of that in, they probably dropped points that they would ordinarily have gotten. But and look, in fairness to Tipperary as well, they lost to Waterford last year, so they wanted to put that right, and they did. And we saw it the night that we were on, Jackie. Stephen O'Brien's performance was amazing that night, and they minded him as well because of the history record or the injury record that he's had. But I'd still fancy Clare. I think that Clare will be eyeing this up, and they have been quite competitive over the last couple of seasons. They were in the Munster final as well last season, so you'd be giving Clare a nod, all right.
The other two huge games this weekend, you've got Donegal, Monaghan and Galway, Roscommon. And Rory, you're right in what you were even saying to us about the big contenders being in action here. You wonder how much trouble some of them are going to get in. Like, take a Galway, Roscommon. This has been a tricky fixture over the years. The Rossies have given people an awful lot of bother. And I think this is a potential pothole for Pádraig Joyce on his route to what I'm sure would be another Connacht title that they really want for this group.
Well, if you look at the three contenders for the All-Ireland, which is, in my view, we're going to see this weekend, which is Donegal, Galway and Kerry, and there's not much between the three of them in terms of their credentials. I think you kind of have it's kind of low, medium and high. You have a low risk, really, of an upset in one. You have a medium risk, I would suggest, in another. And you have a high risk of an upset in Galway Roscommon. I would think this is a very, very tricky fixture. Now, the game is in Salt Hill and the forecast is poor. There's a surprise. Right. There's a surprise. So, but I think that could potentially suit Roscommon as well. We don't know if Brian Stack is back. He's such a massive player for them. They absolutely need him. Defensively, they are a little bit suspect. But if the weather is poor, we know the wind will howl. If it's raining and it's a little bit chilly, that usually is a leveler in any game, whether it's hurling or football. That'll even things up a bit. I think that will potentially suit Roscommon as well. I think they have a good forward threat to be able to give Galway enough problems to deal with at the other end of the field. They can score goals. Yeah, look, I suppose Galway are helped ever so slightly by the fact that they have had a championship match under their belts already, as much as that was in New York. And I don't know how much you can really read into it, other than maybe it was a sort of a bonding weekend, I would imagine, that was probably used. And but look, I suppose then from Pádraig Joyce's perspective, like after, we'll say, kind of a league that sort of started well and then sort of petered out in a form sense. If you get into your championship where you're coming off the back of losing the All-Ireland final and losing 2 of the last 3, and if you start your championship year on the wrong foot by being knocked out of Connacht so early, that could really destabilize your entire season. So I'd expect a fully loaded Galway. And I think this is going to be a really, really good contest and a very, very competitive game.
Yeah, I agree, Éamonn. And I do think, for all the reasons Rory has outlined, I don't think Galway have a choice but to go hard for this. And they'll want to be road testing early on.
100%. Yeah, look, I as impressive as Roscommon have been at times during the league, and like you said, if they get Brian Stack back, Rory, I think that will be important. They have a very competitive midfield with Eddie Nolan and Keith Doyle. They'll compete well with the big Galway bodies out there. We're not sure about John Maher, whether he'll be available for Galway after the knock he got in New York. But in general, Galway to me have a feel of a team that are on a mission. You mentioned it, Rory, that they have been in the finals over the couple of years, and the Americans have that expression about a championship window, where a team have a window where they need to get it done. And Galway are in that window. They still
and that window is closing, Éamonn.
That's the point. That they still have the likes of Paul Conroy, obviously, who's central to them. He's pushing on, even as remarkable as it seems. The likes of Shane Welch and Damien Comer and those players, they're going into their 30s now as well. So they have a very strong, settled group. And I just think they're men in a mission this year, and they're going to appreciate that window is closing, and that there is you have a period to get it done. And they have a lot. I think this time last year, they were doing remarkably well to be, competing as well as they were, considering all of the injuries they had, the way they were managing the injuries. Even Damien Comer mentioned that this week in the bit of media work that he did, that he was training very little and then trying to play in matches, and was disappointed with his form and everything else. But I know, even going back to when I was involved with Kerry, if players aren't training, it's almost like a scientific formula. They're not going to be able to play at the level they need to be able to play at to really express themselves. So Galway, a fully fit Galway, and having those players training and going, I think they'll take a lot of stopping. And I do fancy them. Like you said, Jackie, I do fancy them to go hard this weekend. They're at home, and Pádraig Joyce is always hungry for silverware. He was anxious to get into a league final. It didn't quite work out. They have a bit of a run going in Connacht now. They have a kind of a dominance in Connacht, and he'll be anxious to keep that going. But I do think it'll be a massive battle, and Roscommon will bring loads, and they've a serious attack as always. Whether they'll be able to hold it out at the back is the thing, and especially will they be able to deal with Damien Comer if Galway are using him the way that they used him the night for his cameo against the Dubs. So that'll be worth the admission fee alone if they are using him in that kind of a manner.
I think they'd want to get a sense of where he's at as well, though, Éamonn. Would they, as in, if you get, let's just say, with all due respect to Leitrim, you get a semi-final against Roscommon, a final against Mayo, which are two really good games, tough opposition, heavy on the ground, physical stakes. Throw him in there. See what he's like. See what he can get through. Surely these are the games to find that out, because another few weeks before we're into All-Ireland series down the line versus, let's say, with all due respect, what Kerry and Dublin are getting and the sort of physical challenges they might get over the next few weeks.
Oh, I'd say if he's fit, man or God won't hold him back, Jackie, after the couple of years he's had injury-wise. Yeah. And I think Galway as well, I'm not sure about what's the story with Shane Welch's fitness. They'll want them playing together. Because, I mean, in 2022, when they came so close to winning the All-Ireland, they played a lot of minutes together that year.
Exactly.
But since then, again, they've played very little together. And, that's getting them playing together and playing, if they can get them both playing well together, they'll take a lot of stopping.
Yeah, interesting times ahead for them. What about in Ulster then, Rory? Because if Galway are the major contenders, and I think Donegal have probably shown us enough this year to treat them with a genuine All-Ireland sense around them. They seem to have the running game. They've got the players. It's actually more how Jim McGuinness manages it. No more than what we're talking about there with Galway and what Pádraig Joyce does with the likes of Comer, with Walsh. I think Jim McGuinness has a similar issue in what he does with McBrearty, with Murphy, trying to see what way does the team shape up against a Monaghan, and how do they go on a long run where he keeps them all happy and he tries to get enough minutes in them to allow them all to play.
And that's a huge challenge when you consider if they have to beat Monaghan this weekend just to make an Ulster semi-final. It's a tough road, in fairness, from Jim McGuinness' perspective. And if they're to go all the way to the All-Ireland, how many championship matches are they going to end up having to play? Would it be 10,
nice
11?
For the second half of the league.
Exactly.
Road.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They got their pre-season done for the second half of the league. But I think you would absolutely expect Monaghan to test their pulse in a much more forensic fashion than what Derry managed to do on the first week in the championship 2 weeks ago. And I think it'll be Monaghan have shown right through the course of the league, right into the league final, they've been, again, a brilliant story in the springtime, insofar as lots of people, I suppose, was writing the epitaph, the relegation followed by the retirement of a marquee player. Usually that means that you fall away, and here they are back again. They are always exceptionally difficult to beat in the championship. They will always leave something on you in every game. You will be absolutely sure they will come, ready for a proper championship tussle. The game is in Clonus. You'd expect a big crowd, but do they have the quality? I think, do they have the genuine quality at both ends of the field, and even right throughout the team? I'm not so sure. I just think Donegal are operating at a higher level, but again, when we were talking about low, medium, and high, this is only a sort of a medium chance of an upset for me. But not without hope. I mean, they haven't beaten Donegal in the championship, I think, in 10 years. But Monaghan love all these. They go they're the ideal underdog. They love going into championship matches where people are saying that you don't have a chance of winning it. They know that everybody is talking about Jimmy's winning matches and Donegal and Michael Murphy and all of that. So I think that'll suit them. That'll suit their mindset. It'll suit the fact that look, they're effectively playing at home, and yeah, but you would have to say that Donegal will just have that little bit too much quality, I think, all the way through.
I understand that exact sentiment that Rory is making, Éamonn, right? But the one caveat I would say is the way that Monaghan, I know they were operating in Division 2, so I'll take this with a small caveat, but the scores that they were racking up, their ability to get 2-pointers, their ability to hang in the game and to never stop, I think Donegal are going to find them hard to shake them off, because if they sit back like they have done, and even if they let teams come on them, Monaghan will kick scores and they'll be in this game. And I think that's the challenge for them.
Yeah, no, and look, I think in fairness, Donegal have been hugely impressive, Jackie, and they're in a great place. and I think Jim McGuinness is very happy with where they're at in terms of everything, in terms of the clarity around the way they're playing, in terms of personnel, competition within the squad being deep in this year, their fitness levels, form of so many key players. They have a lot, where it needs to be, but ultimately they want to win the All Ireland this year. And along the way, they're going to get tests, and he's possibly going to have to adapt. And I made that point to you the Sunday night, after they beat Derry. I can't wait to see what the Monaghan forwards do with the Donegal defensive setup, because the way that Donegal set up, to me, I'm still unconvinced if that's the way to win in All Ireland under the new rules. Now, look, Jim McGuinness obviously thinks that it is going to work, or he certainly thinks it's going to work in the short term. So I'll be interested to see how it pans out over time. But I just feel that the way that they sit in deep and they go in groups and defend in clusters, then it's brilliant if you go into the cluster. It's highly effective, as we've seen. But there's two parts that you mentioned, the 2-pointers. Monaghan have 2-point shooters from outside. They also have a good target man inside in Rory Woods, that if they can entice Donegal out a bit, they're able to use that ball inside to him. But even more important, I think, this weekend, and it's what I'll be looking forward to watching, is the likes of Micheál Bannigan and Stephen O'Hanlon in particular, that if they can isolate them in one-on-one situations, they can beat a man, and then the whole thing opens up. And the thing about it is that because Donegal sits so deep, if you can beat a man, you can get a shot off. You're close enough to goals to get a shot off straight away. So I'll be personally very interested in that part of it this weekend. If Monaghan can't, make any kind of a handle of it, it'll be again, it'll be proving that Jim McGuinness is right and that he's happy with his system. But I just think that the better teams with the better forwards, they'll be able to punch holes. And, the night on the Sunday game showed an example of Brendan Rodgers, where when you just punch a hole, you're in straight away because of how deep they're sitting. So I'll be fascinated by that aspect of it. I think it is going to be a ferocious battle. I think for Monaghan to win, Donegal are going to have to be a bit off, and Monaghan will have to play absolutely out of their skins. But that's possible, and Monaghan are
That
great.
is possible.
Yeah. And Monaghan are great in that exact situation. But I will be really interested in the Monaghan attack versus the Donegal defence. If they can get enough ball, can they expose frailties in that Donegal defence that we probably haven't seen too much of yet this year?
Yeah. Do you know what's funny, Rory, when you're listening to him and saying what he thinks the rules are set up for versus what Jim McGuinness thinks the rules are set up for, and the exposure? To me, that's the funniest thing that's happening in all of this, where there's this constant flux of, this is what we tried to get out of it, this is what we think is going to happen, and then somebody else flipping it all on its head. I genuinely think it's been really entertaining over the last couple of weeks, just watching that piece happen in front of our eyes.
Well, like it's fleshed out more tactical nuance within the game itself. Like my club, we're top of Division 1 in Dublin at the minute. We've played 4 games and we've won all 4. Now, we would have been hot favourites for relegation. We would have been the number 1 expected team to be going back down. Now, we've had a great start, right? And we're about to run into Kilmacud Crooks very, very soon. And look, the party might end then, and that's fine. But what the new rules have done is it's given teams like ourselves different ways to win games.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of really good 2-point shooters for a start, which means we're not solely dependent on trying to break down mass defenses. And if you're a smaller team, or you're not as you don't have the physical prowess to try and kind of batter your way through that, then I think that could suit. Like, I actually think the new rules will play into the hands. Some of the fears, for instance, that we were expecting some of the teams at the lower end and the hidings that they were potentially going to get from teams at the upper end. That hasn't really manifested itself. We saw Wicklow last week. Okay, they lost by 9 in the end, but 9 points isn't a lot, really. And people were probably calling 20 plus, and I'm sure even under the old rules, that might have been the results back then. So I think there are different ways to win Gaelic football matches now, and there are different means available to coaches, and the ones that embrace it and embrace it quickly, I think, will be the ones that will reap the most rewards. And I think it's a better thing for the game in an overall context.
Yeah. Last word to you, Éamonn, because I do genuinely think that Rory is right. There is application to do this in so many different ways. And I think if we are to keep the game moving forward, that's a really good thing.
It is, absolutely. And I think, look, that was one of the things we spoke about it last year, Jackie, before there was any new rules or anything else, is that one of the things that was challenging from the point of view of watching and analysing games was how much of the same it had become. And in particular, the way that a team played was very much dependent on the way the opposition played. If they played a certain way, you had to react and play that way as well. Whereas there is freedom now to play in different ways, and, you know, depending on the kind of capabilities of the players that you have, you can play a particular style, whether it's a kicking style, whether it's a running style, whether it's a...
If you want to play one man on the edge of the square, bang him in early ball to him. If you want to play a running game, if you want to move it through the hands, if you want to play a Kerry style, I think it's been a great evolution, Éamonn. Sorry, apologies to cut across.
No, exactly. That's it, Rory. That's exactly it. That it's just there is space to play different ways again, and which is good. And counties are staying loyal to the style that suits them best and brings the best out of them, rather than possibly having to play a particular style that you had to play to try and win games. And, you know, the game that we always think about, well, I always think about anyway, was the Derry-Kerry quarter-final last year, where it just, neither side, you know, expressed themselves the way they can express themselves, and we all ended up with that game. So no, that's definitely a positive and definitely enjoyable, and we should see plenty of variety of styles over the weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed, and hopefully a little improvement in the weather, but who knows? Lads, we'll leave it there. Enjoy the matches over the course of the weekend, and wherever you're going, enjoy it. We'll be back on Monday to review it all. We will talk to you then. Have a great Easter.
Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.